Axe, Mark, good to see you guys. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, Jake. Good to see you, Jake.
So you have both studied and worked to beat candidates from the other party for years. Let's start there. Mark, what do you think Hillary Clinton needs to do tomorrow night to win the debate?
Well, I think there are basically two things that both the candidates have to do. She has to disqualify Donald Trump, and he needs to qualify himself. But, you know, I mean, she is going to be really prepared, but there's a whole notion that all Trump has to do is sort of not come off the chain. She needs to make him come off the chain. I think she does that by wearing him down and just prosecuting him over 90 minutes. I mean, I think he can kind of hold his composure for 30 minutes or 40 minutes. But, man, 90 minutes is a long, long time, and she just needs to persevere and wear him down with facts, figures, policies, and make it clear that he's not ready to be president.
David,
that's what it's all about at the end of the debate. Who's ready to be president?
And, David, what do you think Trump needs to do to beat Clinton?
Well, first of all, he has to do what Mark suggests. He has to show a modicum of mastery of details of governance, and he has to show the temperament that people so far have felt he lacks in presidential temperament. So, but I agree with Mark. You know, one of the big questions here is stamina. You know, for all of his yammering about stamina, Trump wearied at the end of the primary debates, and he was able to hide because there were a lot of candidates on the stage. There's no hiding in these debates. It's 90 minutes of rigorous exchange, and the top-line answer isn't going to be enough. So that is now the question is whether, knowing that, he tries to turn this into something other than a debate and turn it into a spectacle and go hard after her and try and unsettle her, because her mission in this debate, in addition to doing what Mark said, is to project a kind of connectedness with people, to project her motivation, to allay some of these concerns that go not to her experience, but to her personality and to her approach to politics.
And speaking of spectacle, Donald Trump threatened to invite Gennifer Flowers to debate. The campaign earlier in this program says they haven't formally invited her. I don't know what that means formally, but Bill Clinton's infidelities are obviously not a big topic of discussion for Hillary. However, in 2000, during a Senate debate, here's how she responded to a question from the moderator about not being honest with the country about her husband's involvement with Monica Lewinsky. Take a listen.
Obviously, I didn't mislead anyone. I didn't know the truth. And there's a great deal of pain associated with that. And my husband has certainly acknowledged that and made it clear that he did mislead the country as well as his family.
David, do you expect her to respond the same way if Flowers is mentioned or any of that subject?
You see, I mean, Trump is coming at her from a different direction than Rick Lazio did. This wasn't about her misleading the country. He's attacking her in hopes of getting some of these votes of women who are strongly voting her way. He's raising the notion of that she mistreated the women who were involved in those cases, which is a really harsh charge. I have no doubt that they've spent a lot of time prepping for that, because it would be like Trump to make an attack like that. It's a high-risk strategy, and but it's a hard one for her. So I think they've been modeling this out in their debate prep. I have to assume they have.
Mark, if you were advising Donald Trump, would you tell him to bring this up?
No, I wouldn't go near that. I mean, that is such a risk, and I think that they are so prepared for anything that comes near that question or that issue. And that's the kind of, that could be a debate-ending moment, I think, if he gets anywhere near that kind of territory.
Mark,
I would just add one thing. When this came up in 2000, it redounded to her benefit because there was a great deal of sympathy for her in that situation. And so I agree with Mark that it's a very high-risk strategy, but you never know with Donald Trump.
Mark, we know that it's not just what the candidate says on the stage, of course, but how he or she presents him or herself as well. Al Gore heavily criticized for sighing frequently in 2000 in those debates against then Governor George W. Bush. Take a look.
Man's practicing fuzzy math again. There's differences. I've had a record of appointing judges in the state of Texas. That's what a governor gets to do. There is no new accountability measures in Vice President Gore's plan.
There's a split screen. Candidates, remember that. There's a split screen. Mark, Donald Trump's campaign has created a psychological profile of Hillary Clinton, detailed analysis of her body language, verbal tics. Does that kind of thing work at all?
Well, first of all, that just shows you that they're not winging it. They're doing all this psychological profile examining, as you just mentioned. But you know, and of course the campaigns, we always, you know, tried to make a deal with the commission. There wouldn't be split screens, and there always was. So body language is really important. In fact, I talked to Jim Lehrer this week, and he said that, you know, he was watching the candidates he was questioning, and he had no idea that Al Gore was doing that. And it was his daughter after the debate that told him, said, "Dad, you realize that Al Gore lost that debate. So what are you talking about?" So those kind of body language issues are big, big, big signals to the audience, and people are going to be watching temperament and body language as much as they do the actual language itself.
And David, another key thing to watch for tomorrow night, of course, are one-liners. They can win or lose a debate. Back in '84, running for re-election, Ronald Reagan was facing questions about his advanced age. He was 73 at the time. This, of course, is the famous way that he handled it.
And I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And David, Roger Ailes, the former head of Fox News, he has had a hand in Donald Trump's debate prep as far back as August, according to the Washington Post. Ailes and Trump were having Sunday chats at the Trump golf course in New Jersey, testing out zingers over bacon, cheeseburgers, and dogs. Can you plan something like this?
Yeah, well, you know, Roger Ailes was involved in that debate prep with Reagan in 1984, so he's very well versed in this. And these debates, Jake, come down to moments. You don't get graded for 90 minutes. They come down to revealing moments. And yes, both camps are probably planning these exchanges and hoping to land lines that accentuate their message. But I want to say one thing about the split screen thing, because I can't emphasize this enough. In the primary debates, Donald Trump's split screen image was, I thought, damaging to him. He looked like Jackie Gleason in many moments, and he has to avoid that kind of thing in this debate, because if his goal is to appear presidential, then Jackie Gleason isn't going to fly.
Jay, can I say one thing about the zingers? You have to be really good. You know, actors are good at landing lines. Politicians are not. Ronald Reagan was an exception. And the problem with zingers, if you try and coach your candidate to think about a zinger, then they get so focused on that and when they're going to do it during the debate that they don't focus on the moment. So we found that, you know, like 9 times out of 10, it actually doesn't work, and it's better to just stay in the moment and not be thinking about trying to land a line somewhere. And then as often happens, you get off a good spontaneous moment like Bush did on the fuzzy math thing.
But it does depend on the candidate, because some of these candidates are more proficient than others. And Hillary Clinton, my guess is, will come in armed with a really sure sense of how she's going to deal with certain situations, including lines. Trump may be a little bit more improvisational, as is his want.
I could talk to you two all day. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.